complaint that you often hear about the American political system is that the fact that we have a two-party system constrains the choices that voters have. That because we have these two big parties, we basically, as citizens, are reduced to having to choose between one of two people instead of being given a broader range of options that might be more representative of what we want. So this is why oftentimes people will say, I don't like the two parties, they're different from one another. What we need to do is we need a third party. We need another party. And as many of you probably know, the American political system has not been very kind to third parties. Third parties tend not to win very much, except at the local level, and they tend not to last very long. And oftentimes when a third party is formed, usually what ends up happening is that it ends up replacing one of the older parties, in the way that the emergence of the Republican Party led to the decline of the Whig Party. So instead of having three parties, you end up with a different two-party system, but always two parties. And thus always limiting the choices of voters. And this makes people dissatisfied. But one of the things that's not appreciated is that there is a pretty easy to understand explanation for why we have a two-party system. It's not some strange, dumb fact that we wish we could overcome but can't. It's a product of the kind of electoral system we have. In the United States, it is usually the case in an election that whoever gets the most votes wins. So in a congressional election, for example, in a district, the person who will represent that district is the person who gets the most votes. That person doesn't have to get a majority of votes. If there are, say, 5 candidates in a district, you may only need to get 20% of the vote. 80% of the people in your district could have voted against you. But if you're the person who gets more votes than anyone else, you will win. And it is a winner-take-all system. Whoever gets the most votes wins. Everybody else gets nothing. So, for example, you can think about it this way. Let's say in the United States, you have an election, and in every single district, the Republicans get 51% of the vote, and the Democrats get 49%. It's like in every congressional district. That means that almost half of America wanted to be represented by a Democrat, but slightly more than half of America wanted to be represented by Republicans. So it's a divided country. There are a lot of people who support Democrats, almost as many as support Republicans. But the nature of our electoral system is that if the Republicans win in every district by 51%, they get every seat. They will get 100% of the seats in Congress, even though they only got 51% of the popular vote. It is a winner-take-all system. What that means is there are no points for second place. So parties have an incentive, politicians have an incentive to try to build the biggest parties they can because they need to win to get anything. Right? So even if, say, if there was a third party, if that third party got 20% of the vote, that's a lot of people voting for it in a particular area. But there will be no reward for them whatsoever. So that's why, for example, the Tea Party movement in the United States has a very particular identity, but it is an identity within the Republican Party. You might say, well, if they dislike the Republican establishment so much, why don't they just form a third party? And the reason why is because if they formed a third party, none of them would hold office. They wouldn't have as much influence. So instead of being a separate party, they become a faction within a bigger party, which will be a coalition that is more diffuse, that is perhaps more centrist than some of the other parties would be, but that's the strategy for electoral success. And so, and this was actually formulated, this idea, a while ago, back in I think the 50s, by a French social scientist named Maurice Duverger. And he basically said, any system that is a winner-take-all system, where each district has a single representative, is going to produce a two-party system. So it's not some just strange thing that's happened to the United States, this two-party system. And it's also not something that really could very easily be overcome. We are really fated to have a two-party system as long as we have the kind of electoral system we have, where there are no points for second place, winner take all.